Do you believe that they are equipped? There's only been a couple of cases, bearing in mind that some several 100,000 travellers have returned home in the last year.
Yeah, good morning, Pete. Look, it is really concerning, and the sort of mystery around how the spread of it could be the the mutant virus. We don't know. They're doing genomic testing on that, but the concern around how that is spread, and some of these hotel quarantine workers, you know, all their steps have been traced, and it looks very, very odd as to how they might have caught it, because they followed all the protocols and so on. And there's questions about whether it spread through the air conditioning system, and that's being checked, whether it came out of the rooms when you open the door to provide meals, or on a surface. So they are looking at that, and I know that a lot of the testing is going on. I think the broader point here is whether the hotel quarantine system in all of our states and territories, particularly New South Wales and Victoria, can continue to operate. I think they can. I would make the broader point, Pete, that this, you know, and we've been saying this for a year, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but national quarantine or quarantine is a federal responsibility. Scott Morrison has abrogated that responsibility. They've outsourced it to the states.
But they did that
it's
early
in the Constitution.
They did that all. That discussion was had early on. That negotiation with the state was had early on when it comes to hotel quarantine.
Yeah, but look at all the problems that we've seen, Pete. We've seen 37,000, I think it's around 30,000 Australians still trying to get back in because the capacity's not there. I argued that Morrison and the government should be setting up federal quarantine or having a national quarantine plan. We've argued it as an opposition. Set up more quarantine assets. It's your responsibility. Stop dodging your responsibility as a federal government. It's all, and I mean, I've clocked Morrison on this. He keeps outsourcing everything to the states, and when they do well, he takes some of the credit and basks in the glow. And when they get it a bit wrong, sometimes he criticises them, sometimes he's nice to them, so he can look above the fray. Well, you know what? Enough is enough. He's got to take more responsibility. He's got to do his job as the Prime Minister in the Commonwealth, with the responsibility in the Constitution for quarantine.
Do you believe it should be moved out into regional areas? Is the current system out of date now that these more dangerous variants are emerging?
So it's interesting you say that, because that is one option. So if those variants are so transmissible, they're so sort of contagious in that you just open the door and breathe, and it's going to go right through the whole corridor in the hotel and go under the gaps in the door and so on and infect other people, then, you know, the scientists will sort that out and work it out. And so if that is a yes with respect to those variants, then there is a real case to be made for having a much tighter quarantine system, as you say, maybe out in the regions, bespoke kind of accommodations.
But then you're going to have
with
the same
greater
problems
PPE
out there, aren't you?
No. Well, you would have greater. You'd have greater protocols, much more PPE with the workers who are servicing the people in the accommodation, and a much tighter setup. That's what I mean by bespoke. Hotels are built for people to go on holiday or travellers and so on. They're not having all their doors sealed and all this kind of stuff. So you'd have to really look at a much more bespoke quarantine accommodation.
Just on to the journalist over in China, the Australian journalist Cheng Lei. Obvious concerns for her well-being at the moment. China overnight has told Australia to butt out of their legal matters. It does not bode well for her, regardless of what's going on politically.
No, it doesn't, and I'm deeply concerned, as are many of my colleagues across the federal parliament, and of course, as an opposition, we support the government in providing whatever consular assistance is possible to Cheng Lei, but also really standing up and be very clear in stating that we expect acceptable standards of justice, procedural fairness, we expect humane treatment, all of these elements that we probably take for granted in our system of government, to be honest, Pete, but which are somewhat in the absence in China with respect to the arbitrary nature of their justice system or their judicial process. And we've seen many Australians of dual nationality caught up in this, and you know, we have, as a government and an opposition and a parliament, have to stand firm in defence of our people.
They're not going to listen, though, are they? I mean, whatever we say over here, we haven't even been able to get them on the phone when it comes to trade tensions.
Well, there is that. I would say, though, I'm not as pessimistic about that. I think they do listen in the sense that if we are a strong voice and we are joined with other voices in the international community, they do pay some attention to that. You need, I mean, the speech by Joe Biden the other day was a case in point. That kind of moral leadership, that moral authority and credibility is important, because when you stand together with friends and allies, when you believe in international rules of the road, as he put it, and when you believe in the rule of law, you stand and deliver on that, and you actually follow through as a state that believes in it. And that moral authority does have some sway. But yes, it is difficult. They could ignore us, but we still have to stand up for our people.
Okay, Peter Khalil, good to talk. Good to see you. We'll chat to you again soon.
Thanks, mate.